There was an old apartment building in Japan that was 7 stories high. The apartments were very small and decrepit, and the building had no elevator. There was only a large, dilapidated wooden staircase that spans 7 flights of stairs. Each one had 7 steps. On the first floor of the building, there was a 1-bedroom apartment directly opposite the staircase. The landlord who owned it had a hard time finding tenants to stay in the apartment. Whenever he managed to rent it out, the tenant would suddenly leave without ever giving an explanation. Every tenant left less than 1 week after renting the room. One day a young man came in to look at the vacant apartment. He was a college student and didn't have very much money. The apartment was very small, but the landlord was asking for very low rent. The man decided to take the apartment and moved his belongings in a few days later. The first day that the young man spent in the apartment was a Monday. During the night, he was roused from his slumber by a strange noise. It sounded like a child's voice, echoing in the staircase near his front door. "I have reached the first step on the wooden staircase," said the voice. "What is a child doing out of bed at this time of night?" the man wondered to himself. However, he was tired from the transporting of his belongings and just went back to sleep. The next night he was again awakened by the same voice calling out, "2 steps on the wooden staircase have I climbed." On Wednesday night the voice cried, "3 steps on the wood staircase have I climbed." The man jumped out of bed and ran to the front door. When he opened the door, he looked out and he saw the staircase was empty. An unnerving thought crossed his mind. Could it be possible that the staircase is haunted? And so it went the same way on the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th day. Every night the man heard the child's voice calling out. Each time it seemed to get closer and closer. Sunday night finally arrived, and the man was trembling in his bed. He thought about moving out, but told himself that he must be brave. He refused to allow himself to be scared by any ghostly voice. In the middle of the night, he woke to hear something scratching at his door. A voice cried out, "I have reached the 7th step on the staircase." A shiver ran down the man's spine as he heard the locked front door swing open. The next morning, the landlord arrived to collect the rent. When he knocked on the apartment door, there was no answer. Suspicious about the whole thing, he took out a spare key and let himself in. Sprawled across the bed, he found the tenant's mangled body. His face bore an expression of unimaginable fear. The police came and examined the body, but no cause of death could be determined. It seemed as if the man had been scared to death. The apartment is still vacant today, awaiting a new tenant. Over the years, all of the previous residents have fled before the week is through. They all said they left because they feared what might happen when the voice reached the 7th step. There are only 2 people who know this answer: the dead man and the unspeakable thing that climbs wooden staircase every night. I shouldn't have been there. My friend was supposed to be alone. 3 years have passed since that night, but I'll try to tell you what happened, as far as I know. Earlier that day, my friend's parents had left for a weekend vacation. She was alone in the house. I offered to come over and keep her company. I arrived around 8 p.m. and we spent the night chatting and watching TV in her bedroom. Before we knew it, it was midnight. That's when everything got weird. We began to hear strange noises outside her bedroom. At first, we thought it was just the house settling, but then we stopped talking and listened. There were soft footsteps coming up the stairs. "Do you think your parents have come back?" I asked. She said her parents were not supposed to return until the next evening. Besides, there are too many footsteps for just 2 people. I ran over to the door, and just before the footsteps reached the hallway, I turned the key in the lock. Suddenly, there was a profound silence. "Is there anybody out there?" my friend asked nervously. We were sure there was someone outside, but who could it be? Just then, we heard a beep. We whirled around and stared at my friend's laptop. She had just received an email. She opened it. The sender was unrecognizable, just a random combination of numbers and letters. When we read the message, it sent chills down our spines. "Whatever happens, do not open the door." As soon as I read those words, a sinking feeling came over me. My heart was beating fast, and I felt like I was about to have a panic attack. I didn't even know what to think. Maybe it was someone just playing a silly joke on us. Maybe it was someone trying to save our lives. Now we knew there was someone out there behind that door. Suddenly we heard a voice. It sounded like my friend's mother. "Please, open the door. Your father and I were in a car accident. We're badly hurt. Please open the door and help us." When she heard this, my friend stared at me wide-eyed. I could still remember the expression on her face. She was in shock. Neither of us knew what to do. "Please, open the door," a male voice pleaded. "We need your help." It sounded just like her father. My friend and I just stood there for a few seconds, frozen to the spot. Then she started towards the door. I grabbed her by the arm and held her back. She slowly turned to me and said, "It's my parents. They need help. I'm going to open the door." "What about the email?" I hissed through gritted teeth. "What if it's true? What if they're not your parents?" "Nonsense," she said. "You heard them. Those were the voices of my parents." Before I could do anything, she struggled out of my grasp and walked towards the door. I still don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was sheer terror. The only thing I could do was run to the closet and hide. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was frightened out of my wits. What I heard then, I'll never be able to forget. To this day, I have nightmares about it. My friend opened the door, and all I could hear were her screams. They were blood-curdling screams, filled with pain and terror. I couldn't help her. All I could do was cower in the closet, keeping perfectly still, praying that I wouldn't be found. I don't know how long I stayed there. It could have been hours. By the time I felt safe enough to come out, it was morning. The bedroom was empty and the door was open. My friend was nowhere to be found. I ran all the way home and called her parents. When I managed to reach them, they told me they were still on vacation. I told them what had happened the night before, and they immediately called the police. They searched for days, but they never found my friend. I doubt they ever will. I don't know what happened that night. I don't know who or what that came and took my friend away. But I know they were out there. I also know that I shouldn't have been there that night. I shouldn't know that they exist. I know someday they will come for me. But whatever happens, I will not open that door. Think of the most solitary place you can imagine. The most isolated, lonely location you can possibly conjure up. A claustrophobic, dirty cell. The people in the door are forever unused. An island eternally floating in a sea of darkness. The shadows hiding everything you can and can't see. A quiet, wind-whipped plain where no direction exists. A desert landscape, all sound muffled by the driving winds and buffeting sands, where half-seen shapes roam the horizon. Imagine spending an eternity there. Terrifying thought, isn't it? Mull it over for a while. An existence with no beginning and no end, alone with your mind and nothing else. Right now, it's a scary scenario. When you get to the afterlife, it won't just be a scenario anymore. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you'd like to, you can follow me at Twitter. The handle is @FuzzyPantaloons, and I'll see you all next time.